So in the previous podcast, we argued that CCUS is essential for accomplishing our net zero goals. This is another report on energy transitions, which argues that while CCUS are vital, their actual role in energy transition is limited. So to make this work, there are several key steps that are needed, starting with the CCS capacity itself. So the International Energy Agency, I closed all the windows so there is no wind making any noise, but now I have suddenly feeling some dry throat here. Okay, so in 2020, according to IEA, we have just 40 million tons of CCS capacity installed. There are a lot of plants there, of course, but by 2030 we will need 760 million tons if we have to pursue IEA's sustainable development scenario. For the future, when you say scenarios, there are many agencies making their own scenarios and providing various details, like the pathway to getting there through CCS, or pathway to getting there with the role of CCS. By 2040, it's argued that the CCS capacity needed will go up to 2.35 billion tons, but similar estimates by other groups like the Wood Mackenzie Energy Transition Service says the current CCUS pipeline is on track for a 2-degree scenario target by 2030, but falls far short of the 1.5 degree pace. Even though I've closed all the windows, there is still strong wind because it comes from under the door and so on. So looking at what is operational in 2020 in terms of billion tons of CO2, you can see that this hardly registers here. Planned projects are less than 1 billion ton per year. The capacity needs to grow 8 times the current pipeline to meet the 1.5 degree level by 2050. So here's the 2040 to meet that goal, and here is where we need to be by 2030 to meet that goal. So the base case for 2050 is here, and this is the 1.5 scenario. So the main point is that it really depends on who's giving you the estimate, but nonetheless, given all that, over 75% of the announced CCUS hub capacity lies within 5 countries. So US, Canada, UK, Russia and Netherlands make up almost 75% or more of it, and 23% is planned in other countries. So here planned projects with planned means projects with status in construction, advanced development, early development, delayed pre-development and hypothetical. So obviously COVID has come in and put a kibosh, monkey wrench into many of these things. The new report from Energy Transitions Commission argues for additional points of why CCUS is still vital for energy transitions, but may have a limited role overall. If we get to accomplishing our clean energy goals and decarbonization goals, then obviously you expect CCUS to be not so critical, even though it may be vital, because there will be places where you cannot completely replace energy from fossil fuels, for example. Okay, so the conclusions, and then we'll look at some details. This report therefore assesses the roles which CCUS should play on the path to net zero and what must happen to ensure it can do so. The key conclusions are that by 2050 the work will likely need to capture and either store or in some cases use 7 to 10 gigaton CO2 per year through engineered carbon capture solutions, obvious. Of this, 3 to 5 gigaton CO2 per year will be needed to achieve net zero emissions in applications where the use of electricity, hydrogen or bioenergy cannot provide a complete solution to decarbonization. This use of CCUS will make it possible to continue to consume 9 million barrels per day of oil, which will be 90% lower than today, and 2,700 billion cubic meters of gas per year, which is over 30% lower than today, while still achieving a zero emission economy. So you are talking about emitting and taking out, assuming there are no hysteresis effects and that we are very good at capturing and storing or utilizing CO2. Around 15%, 0.5 to 0.8 gigaton CO2 per year will be needed to capture industrial processes such as cement production, which by their nature produce CO2, and 85% from capture from continued use of fossil fuels where alternatives are less available and prohibitively expensive. Sorry, there is still some strong wind, but I'll check for sound. Another 4 to 5 gigaton CO2 per year will be needed to achieve engineered carbon removals. Provided strong regulations are in place, CCUS can be technically safe and can be achieved at costs which enable it to play an economically valuable role on the path to net zero. So the message is always clear that CCUS is going to be part of the game to accomplish global warming targets, to net zero, decarbonization, whatever way you want to talk about it. The current pace of development of CCUS is far short of what is required. This is key. This reflects past confusions about where CCUS is most needed, inadequate investments, and controversies which have generated public opposition. So one has to be careful about carrying people along in implementing these things. So a combination of private investment and supporting public policy is required to ensure that CCUS can play its vital but limited role. Let's run through some nice graphics that are provided by this Energy Transitions Commission report. Carbon capture, storage and utilization, vital but limited. We know what CCUS methods are. We have discussed it elsewhere. Again, CCUS has a vital but limited role. So final energy mix in a zero carbon economy by 2050 then will look like this. Zero carbon electricity from solar and wind, for example, will have to cover 65 to 70%. Bioresources only 5%, remembering all the debates that go with it in terms of life cycle analysis, competition with land use for other purposes, and of course food security battles as well. And fossils with CCUS, so fossil fuel consumption will be still there at 10 to 15%, and 10 to 15%, and 15 to 20% has to come from clean hydrogen. A significant scale up will be required, so carbon dioxide gigaton CO2 per year at 0.04 in 2020 has to go up 250 times. So in the base scenario 7 gigatons, and high development scenario 10 gigatons. So that's the 7 to 10 range there. CCUS will be needed in three contexts. Essential role, limited technical alternatives. So in industrial processes like cement and steel, which produce CO2 and cannot be decarbonized via other zero carbon solutions, CCUS will be critical. And to provide crucial engineered CO2 removals from the atmosphere, we talked about DAC being essential in the previous podcast. And of course the economic role, where it is the lowest cost decarbonization solution given local resources and costs. So the way COVID played out in India and China, both have ramped up coal use, and so has Germany, but Germany is doing it because its supply from Russia has diminished because of the war with Ukraine, and India and China don't have their own resources, so to keep up their economic growth they have to burn coal. And of course there are many countries which will not have ability to go to nuclear or hydro or even solar and wind. Then you have to consider economic role for CCUS as the most viable option as well. What will it take? Capturing 7 to 10 gigaton CO2 per year will require all the sectors and fossil, bio and air capture to be possible, both in the baseline scenario of 7 gigaton CO2 and high development scenario of 10 gigaton CO2. So fossil power here, fossil fuel processing, iron and steel, blue H2, cement, and BEC, which is bioenergy and carbon capture, 2.5 to 4 gigaton CO2 of emissions from fossil fuels captured per year, i.e. less than 10% of emissions from use of fossil fuels today. So bio is sitting there. and air has to play a bigger role, especially for high development scenarios. Direct air capture will be critical for high development scenarios. More CO2 stored and some utilized, so 4.4 stored and utilized 2.5 can go into synthetic aviation fuel, high value chemicals and plastics, enhanced oil recovery, which is counterintuitive. We're trying to reduce carbon, but we are pulling out more fossil fuels. But again, where it is necessary, it will be part of the game. So that will be under specific and limited conditions, of course. Stored in building and materials, so cement and concrete. Investments in the meantime must reach 285 billion per year by 2050. So annual capex by carbon capture sequestration segments. 2020 we're at 5 billion, so it has to increase almost 60 times to 285 billion by 2050 for transport and capture. So storage is done by then in terms of investments, R&D and so on. So here the thing to remember is that in 2030 and 40 storage investment is still a part of the overall investment, but by 2050 less than 5% of total energy transition investment will be required for capture and transport. So there is a relative this is why it should have a limited role by then, because it has played out its role to transition us to a clean energy system. Rapid scale up of CCUS capacity in from the 2020s. By 2030 the world will need CO2 capture, so annual CO2 capture has to be up by 20 times from 40 million tons today to 800 million tons CO2. And we have to remember subtly that there is the other non-greenhouse gases which are not included here, which will affect these calculations as well. Greater than 300 CCUS facilities in commercial operation from 30 that are there today. So by 2030 we have to go 10 times higher. In transport and storage, 1 gigaton CO2 per year storage in operation now, another 5 gigaton CO under development, but we will need 100 CCUS industrial hubs operating around the world. So we have to do early storage development as a necessary precondition for CO2 capture and investment. Investments and R&D, 70 billion per year, up from 3 billion per year today. Support innovation via R&D and industrial scale demonstrations. So strong carbon price and de-risking mechanisms are necessary to unlock financing. But if you look at what's happening in the US, the Democrats have slowly moved away from carbon taxes because they think they can do it by incentivizing other ways. Well, let's see how that plays out. We will soon find out. 6 key actions by governments, industry and finance. I won't read all these details, but to look at 6 key actions. Overcoming green premium to make CCUS deployment economic. So green premium is every time you have to go to alternatives, carbon pricing, mandates for low carbon end products, public procurement, de-risking mechanisms such as contracts for difference, etc. will come in, add costs. Developing key infrastructure, fostering business model and technology innovation, regulating and managing risks, ensuring high capture rates and storage performance, building public support for an appropriate role for CCUS. Here, all government, regulators, industry, oil and gas firms and finance players have to play a role. So regulators don't have a role here, but they have a role here. Oil and gas firms don't have a role here, but they have a role here and here. And you can see the various amounts of dollars needed. Financial players are here as well. As for building public support for appropriate role for CCUS, examples include articulating clear, strategic but limited role, and ensuring transparency on capture and storage performance so that equity, justice, and general suspicion of the public is dealt with effectively to co-produce these solutions. Okay, so it's nice contrast to think about the previous podcast where we say direct air capture will be necessary for transitions, and here we are saying CCUS will be vital but may have a limited role in energy transitions by the end, which is not a bad news. It's just that energy transitions have to be successful in decarbonizing the system. Okay, let's leave it here.